Real food keeps getting attacked. Lab food keeps getting promoted. And here's the part that nobody talks about. You can grow real food. You can raise chickens. You can grow tomatoes, plant potatoes, save seeds, raise livestock if you've got the land. But you can't grow lab meat. And that means the more society moves away from real food and towards factory food, the more dependent people become on corporations, supply chains, patents, and centralized control. That's the real flag for me. It's the loss of the complete freedom and sustainability. So now, before anybody starts freaking out in the comments, I'm not accusing anybody of crimes. I'm not saying I have proof of some giant conspiracy. What I am saying is this. When enough coincidences all start pointing in the same direction, regular people need to pay attention. Think about this pattern. Ever since COVID, there's been a huge push against beef. Cows are bad, beef is bad, meat is bad, methane out of their butt, climate change, carbon footprint, eat less meat, switch to alternative proteins. Now, at the same time, the WEF crowd and the Agenda 2030 people keep talking about transforming food systems sustainably into alternate proteins. And yes, they really have talked about openly about insect protein and replacing traditional meat consumption. Eating bugs. That's the bottom line. So then we add the bird flu, which just happened to come out just right around the end of COVID. Suddenly, millions of chickens and turkeys are culled. Eggs get scarce and expensive. Poultry gets tight. And regular families pay the price again. But isn't it funny how the fake meat industry never seems to have these problems? No bird flu, no cattle disease, no tick allergy, no egg shortage. Because when your food comes out of a lab, they can sell it as controlled, clean, safe, and sustainable. And maybe that's the whole sales pitch. Real food keeps getting attacked. Lab food keeps getting promoted. Maybe it's all about money. Now maybe that's all perfectly harmless. And maybe it's all a coincidence. But then you start noticing other weird things orbiting around the same topic. You've got billionaire investors buying huge amounts of farmland, investing in lab-grown meat, finding biotech insect projects, genetically modified mosquitoes being released in places like Florida and Texas to quote-unquote quell the distribution of disease. And then all of a sudden malaria starts showing up in the headlines again in both those places. But we're being told it's all a coincidence. Now, to be fair, that does not prove that the mosquitoes cause malaria. Correlation is not proof. But regular people are still allowed to ask, why are we redesigning nature in the first place? Didn't we learn anything off of COVID when we had gain of function? Obviously not. Then we've got the Lone Star tick spreading across parts of America and a lot of people developing alpha-gal syndrome where suddenly they can't eat red meat anymore. But they can eat the lab meat. And the Lone Star tick used to mostly be in the southern and eastern United States. So it's showing up now farther north, including places like the Northeast that didn't have to deal with it at all, and places like Canada. Now they'll say, well, it's climate change. Okay, maybe climate plays a role. I'm not denying that. But Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts didn't suddenly become Texas overnight. They don't have the same climate. Okay? So why all the way up there first? Just kind of like the Lyme disease, isn't it? So I'm allowed to ask if something else is helping these things spread. And again, I'm not saying somebody engineered anything. I'm not saying somebody released it on purpose. I'm just questioning. And as an American citizen, I have a right to question everything. I'm saying it's one hell of a coincidence that while society is pushing people away from beef, suddenly we've got tick-related meat allergies spreading everywhere. And now there are discussions and research projects involving genetically modified ticks too. At some point, regular people are allowed to stop and ask, what exactly are these people doing? What exactly are they up to? And history doesn't exactly make people feel warm and fuzzy about this stuff. There have been suspicions for years involving Cold War biological experiments, insects, ticks, weaponized disease research. Congress has even raised questions in the past about whether military programs experimented with ticks decades ago. Does that prove Lyme disease came from a lab? No, absolutely not. But it does prove governments and scientists have experimented with these kind of things before. And that's the part that bothers me. Because every single time humanity starts monkeying around with nature, nature seems to punch back hard. Whether it's gain-of-function research, genetically modified insects, or redesigning the food that we eat. We keep acting like we're smarter than nature itself. And maybe we're not. Maybe every single one of these things is a coincidence. Maybe none of it is connected. But the coincidence sure is funny, isn't it? Maybe 20 years from now, I'll look back and say, boy, I sure connected a lot of dots that weren't connected. That's fair enough. But I'd rather ask uncomfortable questions now than blindly trust powerful people who keep telling us don't ask questions. Because the last few years taught us a lot about something very important. The minute somebody tells you not to ask questions, don't worry about it, you're perfectly safe, that's usually the exact moment you should start asking questions. So let me know what you think. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm onto something. Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. But one thing is for sure. When people start redesigning bugs, biology, and the food supply itself, regular people better start paying attention. Because usually, trouble is right around the corner. Let me know what you think. Patriot Zero out.